Hi, this is Bill Watkins. Thanks for taking a few minutes and looking into the scriptures with me. Last week we began the study of Job, and we're just going to hit highlights in Job and general themes, but I hope that it's going to be helpful. I want to take you back to chapter 1 of the book of Job, where that God has mentioned Job to Satan, and Satan says, does he serve God for nothing? If you take away everything he has, he'll curse you to your face. And God says, he's in your hands, just don't touch him. That's chapter 1. Now, what does Satan do? Beginning in verse 13. There was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and there came a messenger to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them, and the Sabaeans fell on them and took them and struck them down with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, there came another and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them, and I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was still speaking, there came another that said, the Chaldeans formed 3 groups and made a raid on the camels and took them and struck down the servants with the edge of the sword, and I alone have escaped to tell you. And while he was yet speaking, there came another that said, your sons and your daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and behold, a great wind came across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house. It fell upon the young people, and they're dead, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Then Job arose and tore his robe and shaved his head and fell on the ground and worshipped. He said, naked I came from my mother's womb, naked I shall return. The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And in all this, Job did not sin or charge God with wrong. Can I just tell you that if I place the story of Job in a larger context, the Old Testament has a lot to say about suffering, and it gives several causes for suffering. In Deuteronomy chapter 28, God warns that a curse will fall on Israel if they break their covenant with him and trust other gods. They will suffer if they break their covenant. Proverbs again and again states that sin brings about suffering as a natural consequence. But the book of Job is different. The title character, Job himself, suffers precisely because he is a good man, because he is devout, because he does love the Lord. He suffers in a way that's unbearable and impossible for him to understand. There is no way in the middle of this he has any idea of why this is happening to him. And the book then is telling us something about suffering that the rest of the Old Testament often does not say. That God sometimes allows pain that seems to have no purpose and no explanation while we're going through it. That God actually allows that to happen. It shows us how to deal with extreme suffering and demonstrates the promises God makes to us in our suffering. In some ways, Job is a prefigure of Jesus, who was suffering because he was devout, because he was good. And Jesus suffered to further God's purposes, to defeat the accusations of the accuser, of the adversary, of Satan, and to glorify the Lord. Can I tell you that suffering does the same thing today, even when you can't understand what you're going through? That if you face it in faith, you will find, not in the time you're going through it, but maybe before you die, and certainly in eternity, that you have furthered God's purpose on earth, that you have defeated the accusations of Satan, who has said the only reason you serve God is because God just keeps giving you stuff, and so you won't bite the hand that feeds you. Or it's also to glorify God. The world won't be won by Christians who have everything going their way. When all turns out well and their children all are healthy and their marriages are all strong and their jobs are all secure and their promotion is constant, the world doesn't sit up and take notice so much of a Christian when that happens to them. But when everything goes wrong, when everything is taken away, you've lost every single thing that people think you have to have in order to be happy, and you still praise God, you still worship, you hold on to your faith, you hold on to your joy even in the middle of your pain, the world notices that. And when the world notices that, God is glorified. Whatever you're going through, God knows what it is, And behind it all is a purpose that he chooses not to explain to us in this life, but that has a purpose and that ultimately will work out not just to your glory and to his, but to your great joy throughout all eternity. Don't give up. Thanks for watching.